All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. I'm here today with Adam, aka GoCarp. I'm putting his Twitter in the chat for those that haven't followed him yet. I have a lot of new subscribers to the channel, so if you don't know who Adam is, he is one of the OGs of the Palantir community, an absolute gem to everyone being able to understand this government business. I think he has spent the past 4 years, I don't know how many hours. I think he got to put well over 10,000 into understanding the government business the way he has, and he really has helped the entire retail community understand it. We've done about like 6 or 7, of course, 6, 7, of course. That I didn't even mean to say that, but we've done at least 6 or 7 streams over the past year, and so I guess this is our 8th one. We're gonna go deeper into the government business. Adam, how you doing?
Good, man. It's hard to believe it's been 6 or 7. And yes, I watched South Park. I still have zero idea what the 6-7 thing means, so I'll just laugh along with it. And thank God Peter Thiel got his own little cameo in there, because nothing's more validating than being made fun of in a South Park episode.
Nothing can be more validating. All right, so let's get right into it. Usually when Adam comes on the stream, he has a lot of things to talk about when it comes to the government business. Again, Palantir's government business 4 years ago was criticized as being too much of the revenue, and now it is not as much as it was before, but it's almost seen in a more positive light because it's very sticky. And given the administration that we have and given the type of margins that Palantir is putting up, that government business is not as volatile as commercial, which is actually very nice to have. So narratives have definitely flipped over the past couple of years, and Adam has been following those narratives. Before we get into all the government stuff, Adam, let's start off with this. We just had, I think, the single best quarter in the company's history, arguably one of the best quarters in stock market history. What was your raw reaction to Q3 2025?
Not really surprising. I mean, the funny part is anytime that we have these earning discussions going forward for the next, call it 5-7 years, we're always going to say it's the biggest and the best, because realistically, that's how Palantir's business is going to compound over the next decade. You know, a lot of the stuff that people don't realize, especially if you're new into Palantir, is it's a 23-year-old company, but it's only a startup in terms of the stock market world, because in their history, they only really focused on government and a few of the agencies. When they went public, they're like, all right, now we're going to go and take the entire market. So these numbers for OG holders like myself, you, Bobcat Gang, everyone in the fellowship, and just in the Palantir community overall, it really shouldn't be surprising. I think as an investor, we kind of have to look at the first 5 years, because now we've been a public company for 5 years in two folds: the pre-boot camp era and the post-boot camp era. It's safe to say that the boot camp, I don't want to say saved the stock or the company, because it was never really, an issue, but it completely changed the trajectory of it. And now that we've had, what is it, a full 18 months of boot camps at this point, maybe it's 2 years, you're really starting to see the compounding growth rate just off the earnings. I think I saw the top 20 customers now are spending 83 million. Last quarter, that was what, like 70 million. So the top 20 customers are spending more. The net dollar retention is starting to tick back up. That number is kind of important for us, but it's also kind of not important for us, because when they add these new customers, it kind of skews the figure. But the fact that it's going up is a very, big sign. And the main thing for any investor for Palantir at the moment should really just be focused on one thing, which is customer growth. And we still have not hit 1,000 customers. So I think we're at 911 customers. I'm trying to find it in the presentation.
Yep.
So
9/11.
Yeah, 911. So I mean, they still have tons and tons and tons of, TAM to hit. And I don't think they're going to need 20,000 customers. And I'm looking at the slide right now, 530 commercial. And from a year ago, they were at 321, so 65% year over year. 911 in total, a year ago, it was 629, 45 year over year. So you're talking about drastic commercial growth and obviously government growth in the customer count. And as these customers either A, stay on board, which 9 times out of 10 they will, and they increase their customer count, we're going to start seeing these figures just keep getting bigger and better and better and better and better over the next decade because, as we know, acquire, expand, scale. Some of these customers, they're already obviously past the acquired phase and they're hitting that expansion phase. And in some of those, they're hitting the scale. Others, they're just touching that expansion phase. So we're really starting to see the infancy of the S curve and the alpha growth. So when you see those posts on Twitter of like, we'll use NVIDIA, who we are, I'm sure, very happy about as one of the customers, is, and it shows their, revenue per quarter, and it's showing like 300, 500, 600, 750, 825, blah, 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 billion, 10 billion. Like, you're going to see those posts with Palantir in the near future. So it's just a matter of time. So the most important thing is just the customer growth. The figures and the earnings are just absolutely disgusting in the best possible way. And I mean, I don't know what's the most impressive figure. I mean, what would you pick?
No, I agree. I mean, there were the most impressive part of the earnings to me was the operating margins. I mean, for that to be above 50%, it's getting really exciting because if they can continue that growth with these margins, you're having 50 cents of every dollar come to the bottom line. It's just one of the best business models I think we've ever seen. And usually software companies can't get those types of margins. They'll get good gross margins, but not good actual either adjusted operating income or GAAP net income margins because it's tough because you got to get rid of all the expenses and get that final piece of dollar at the bottom line. And there's a lot of expenses that come up, usually headcount, usually a sales force. Palantir doesn't have to deal with that, which is why it's very exciting.
Salesforce, interesting term. So yeah, I mean, trying to be keep my language to a minimum. So you.
Let me ask you this question, then we'll get into the government stuff because we got to talk about it. Michael Burry, $1 billion put position. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw that?
So my reaction was, what is he truly at in terms of the value of his position? Because Jack did a very good post on this. Jack Prescott of a shout out Bobcat Gang is, he dug it up. Usually Burry doesn't post these figures until later, but he posted it like I think he did the research like 2-3 weeks before he normally does it. So in my opinion, and granted, we don't know, and that's the rules of the stock market, why many people think it's rigged or manipulated to a degree, is he's probably underwater. Maybe now he's break even. Because if you remember on the day of earnings, it touched like $220 a share for legitimately like a hot second in the after hours.
Yep.
There's no way Burry at that point was looking at that and saying, I'm going to make money on this.
Right.
Now, he might. We don't really know. We need more information. The thing about Burry, and definitely Karp's interview where he was being asked about it, is this. If you don't have the movie The Big Short, and granted, if he never profited off that move to begin with, most investors, especially I'll call them FinTwits, they're not even know who Michael Burry is. So I don't know why, and I say it also with Kathy Wood, why they get so much attention. Okay, great. He called a crash. He also has been calling for a crash since what, 2023? You can be right and be wrong at the same time. A broken clock is right twice a day. And that's what he is. And he's been waiting years. And granted, yeah, 220 to what's the current price? 175? 180. Okay, yeah, that's a big drop, $40. But you have to remember, for OGs, we rode this from $45 to $6. And last year, me and you were on this podcast saying, what do you think the stock price is going to end at? And we both said, oh, maybe around 30, 35. I think we'll be very happy being at $180 at this exact moment. If you told us last year on this specific day, I think the stock was 50, maybe $60.
Yep.
If you told us then, oh, it's going to be at 180 and even cross over 200, we both would have laughed in your face. So it was definitely, we're way ahead of the game as long-term holders. Now, granted, if you're a new investor in Palantir, an investor, not a trader, you're probably like, okay, what do I need to do? Why did I buy it? How long am I going to have to hold it? The stock may trade flat for the next 6 months. It is very expensive. There's no doubt about it. But when you're looking at it compared to its peers, and I always point to OpenAI, if OpenAI is going to be valued at $1 trillion, Palantir has to be valued, if not at $1 trillion, at least more, because OpenAI loses money. Palantir makes money. OpenAI has a commodity that Karp would say, which is ChatGPT. Palantir has the operating system to effectively and efficiently wield said commodity in the correct way in the enterprise. And if you look at it through like a coffee bean, I don't know why that's coming in my head. A coffee bean is a commodity. The coffee shop buys said coffee bean and they grind it up and they make coffee out of it. So the bean itself is not very valuable. It's how you utilize it. And that's the main thing that Palantir is providing. The tools to utilize these AI applications, such as a ChatGPT, a Grok, and a Claude, insert LLM here. So the Burry position, I think he put it out there because he was saying, oh crap, margin's going to call, and I'm going to have to sell a lot of assets to cover this, because he wasn't just shorting Palantir. He was shorting NVIDIA. Yep. Now, I don't own NVIDIA. Obviously, I follow NVIDIA to a degree, especially now with Palantir and NVIDIA partnership. I'm going to be watching it much more closely, because one of the main things that we saw through the NVIDIA partnership was obviously Jensen mentioning the ontology as the most important stack in the world. Ironically, back in June, DV, Deep Value, if you're not following him, he dug up a very interesting partnership, which was NVIDIA and Siemens, which was I forgot exactly what they do, but they do something with shipyards, if I'm not mistaken. So you got to just trust me on it. I think at this point you will. I'm pretty spot on with my defense and stuff. So we actually saw back in June that NVIDIA and Siemens had a partnership as it related to this digital twin simulation. Well, if you look it up, now we have full confirmation that they are using Palantir, i.e. being NVIDIA. And with the news coming out of the other week, it's guaranteed. So now we're actually seeing more network effects, and I'm going to send you Deep's tweet, of Palantir, NVIDIA, and Siemens, because earlier in the week, 007 and myself, we found articles about HD Hyundai and Siemens partnering up with the shipyard. So a lot of people need to understand.
And for those who don't know, Palantir has a 5-year, $45 million contract with HD Hyundai.
What was that?
For those... sorry, I froze up. Palantir has a $45 million contract with HD Hyundai. So that's the connection between Siemens and NVIDIA.
Yeah, and that HD Hyundai is going to get even bigger. And because HD Hyundai is going to build basically what Airbus built via Skywise, they're going to build Oceanwise. So we've been watching this pretty much for over a year now, just waiting for the official confirmation of Palantir and NVIDIA. So now that it's officially out there, and you can arguably say that the most valuable company in the world, NVIDIA, with the most important company in the world, Palantir, together is going to make a quote-unquote superpower of software industrialization for the manufacturing base, whether it be for ships, chips, drugs, whatever it might be. So a lot of people, what they need to understand about Palantir, and as they're going to penetrate their market, and this is going to coincide with that giant customer growth, is when a customer is using NVIDIA and then they start using the Palantir ontology, that dollar amount of usage and compute goes back to Palantir. So that's really the main thing that people need to see, is that even if Palantir is not the direct winner, they are winning by proxy because their partner is, quote, using it. And you kind of saw that I think it was on Friday, DV and myself posted it. Accenture had that big, the big thing called the Forge. and I post the video. Like, yeah, that's not Palantir personally, but that's Accenture using Foundry to give their government customers the power of the ontology. So that's the main thing that people need to understand. So you have Burry shorting literally the most valuable company. Okay, fine, I can understand. All right, the company's worth $5 trillion. How is any company worth $5 trillion? We're not going to get into that. I'm going to throw a short position. All right, this company is worth $500 billion. They don't even do $2 billion. I'm going to short that. You have your reasons, and you got blown the F up, which is why you pulled your short and you let out that info early. And we're not going to know for a couple more weeks. And I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks even now because of this. And that, my friend, is what Karp is talking about, market manipulation, and why a lot of people like me, you, the average Joe, see the stock market as, quote, rigged. Because these big boys who have, connections, fat, deep pockets are able to pull shit like this and get away with it. And more importantly, if they profit, if they lose, nothing happens to them. Even if they lose, they deserve to feel consequences, such as Andrew Left and Citron, who was so happy to talk about Karp selling his sales the other day that I had to point out that keep them in mind that you're in trial by the SEC for market manipulation. So maybe you should keep Alex Karp's mouth out of your, tweets out of your mouth, because selling shares at 50 and now it's at 180. Don't you think that if he knew, he would hold on to it? But we'll let them be. They have a lot of attorneys to pay.
I agree. I also think I 1000% agree with you. Burry likely was underwater on this position because Q2 is when he initiated the puts. The lowest price we got to in Q2 was 142. And that was like in August when Citron put out their stuff. And then it rebounded almost instantaneously up into the 150s. And then we got back into the 170s. So at whatever price he initiated the short, I mean, Palantir was at 220, as you said, after hour. Like, he was underwater. And still at 180, I mean, unless he got that short at 160, 175, he's maybe break even, maybe a little bit above water. He's probably still underwater. And then the other question that's really important about this, which is also goes back to why he disclosed the position early, is if you're shorting something, are you looking for a 10% gain? No, you're looking for like a full collapse, right? When he shorted the housing bubble, he looked for the entire collapse. So if he's betting Nvidia and Palantir will completely collapse, I think you've got a bigger issue with the entire economy collapsing at that point, because Nvidia is 8% of the S&P 500. It's not that easy for Nvidia to just fall and everything for it to be okay. Palantir is the biggest AI name in software. For them to fall 50%, you're going to have a lot of other things happen. So I think it's really a bet against the market, not even Palantir and Nvidia. And then the question is, do you think he's right to bet against the entire market? And with the type of execution they're both putting up, it's hard to be the case.
I think part of the issue is, and I think I don't want to say a generational thing, and maybe it's more of an experience thing, is especially in the AI names, such as NVIDIA and Palantir, these older suits and analysts, if you will, they have never seen a technology like this, and they can't comprehend how it works and the disruption it's going to bring. Now, me and you, who have not really got to see the software, we don't work for a Siemens or a NVIDIA or, a Fannie Mae, and we're not using the software in our everyday lives. But we do enough research where we see the people who do use it, who talk about it, to understand what's coming, is they are here to disrupt the spreadsheet. And for these suits who are so, they're just one track mind. This is my spreadsheet. This is how I make my value. This is what their peers are trading at. They can't comprehend that a NVIDIA can be a 5 trillion valuation versus a Microsoft or an Apple or whomever who's up there, because, they have 20 years of history and all this growth and all this dollar and all this profit, all this money in the bank. And Palantir still has $6.5 billion in the bank. So it's not like they had $2. With Palantir, obviously, they're not anywhere near, $25 billion a quarter yet. They haven't even touched $2 billion, but they can't grasp what is coming. And I don't blame them, because it's not easy to see it, especially if you don't focus even if you don't spend 2 days out of the 5 days a week of a work week looking at Palantir and their clients and everything that they put out from press releases and other old research that you can look at, you can't comprehend what it's coming at, which is why when you look at an OpenAI, and I don't mean to pick on OpenAI, but they really deserve to be picked on for many reasons, is if they're going to go value at $1 trillion and they're going to be in a cash burn and lose 40 billion plus for the next 5 years for AI related services, and it's AI that's not really going to help bring you, and by you, I mean a Tyson Foods or a Cisco or whomever, better bottom line and better profits, why are you going to give them that $1 trillion valuation? Whereas Palantir, they're going to help the company, whether that is the Army, a Fannie Mae, the State Department, save money, be more productive, and ultimately give them more margin where they can either spend that dollar investing in new manufacturing plants, giving employees more dollars back, whether that's through stock options or bonuses, or just take that money and put it in R&D more towards Palantir and just be more efficient and save and increase your profit and bottom line. They can't see that and understand that. And I just think it's part of it is generational. And I forgot who told me this. I think back in the 80s, there was maybe like 900 companies or whatever it was, like public, or 1,100. And now there's only like 600 or 7. I forgot what the figure was. So everything has changed. And when you're changing on a spreadsheet model and a company comes along like Palantir that's going to say, I am going to end your spreadsheet, they can't fathom it. And I think that's just part of it. So from a normal standpoint, okay, this company makes $500 million, but they're worth 500 billion. I'm shorting it. On the surface level, makes sense. But once you start digging up those rocks and you start seeing, okay, its peer is worth this, but its projection is this. It's got this in the backlog. Oh, and then it might have this coming in 3-6 months. You can't value it properly. It's a disruptive technology that has never been seen before and never been used before. Remember, 911 clients. And how many of those are government? 400, 500. So it's even less of people to ask and interview and look and see, because you're not going to be able to go up to the Army and be like, so can you give me an all-in down break of the Maven Smart system and don't leave anything out? They're not going to tell you that. So I wish Burry and the rest of the suits shorting it much luck. I'll gladly accept more short interest on the stock, because bulls, we're buying still.
Yeah, and look, we've been buying since it was below $10, and that's the other thing I think Burry isn't fully factoring in, is you got a lot of people that are just going to hold it. Pounds are going to fall 50% from here. People are still going to hold the shares that they bought at 10, 20 bucks. So it's just one of those things where I agree. Disruptive technology like this has humbled all of us that felt, oh, the stock can get expensive. It's like, yeah, we all know it's expensive, but there's, at this point, what, 400 billion in market cap? This is not retail. Good chunk of it's retail that bought early on, but you don't get a $500 billion company all made of retail. There's institutions that have come in and said, we believe this story is real. We don't really understand how to value it, but we are going to get exposure to it. And if they keep executing the way they're executing, I think it's going to be hard for the shorts to deal with it.
Burry and Brentville can go spend an evening at a Motel 6 and talk it over at dinner and while they eat bologna.
Let's transition to the government side of the business. So there's a lot to talk about in the government business. I think let's get into this headline. On August 1st, Palantir signed a $10 billion enterprise agreement with the Army. This involved 75 specific contracts for driving essentially more data analysis capabilities. You've been tracking a lot of these 75 contracts for a long time, or at least since August 1st, and you have a lot of insight into them. I guess let's get started with, what do you think these 75 contracts are going to entail, and which of the few do you think we can start?
So it's going to be very hard to give an actual concrete answer on this, because it's over 10 years. And obviously, with the government shutdown, we are in fiscal year 26. So who knows what that's delaying for the fiscal year 26. Never mind what's going to be delayed in fiscal year 29. So, but out of these 75 contracts, about 11 or 12 I found already what's coming. Some of them they're all open, not specifically to Palantir. They are open for other people to provide information and to bid on, but the likelihood of them getting it, unlikely. And I say that for a couple reasons. One, they wouldn't have put these 75 contracts in a bucket and tie it to Palantir unless the Army felt confident that another vendor, competitor, which they don't have, can come along, do what they need to do, either better or cheaper. And they're forecasting this 10 years out. So, that's why I feel like they're going to get the majority, if not all, of the 75. Some might get canceled. Some might get, all right, we're not going to go forward with this because you could do it through this one and that one. And, maybe Palantir, at the end of the day, they get 70 contracts at $9.5 billion. I don't think anyone is going to be crying, well, you didn't get the other five for 500 million. You know what? They're going to get the majority of the money. And with what's coming, you have to remember that it's an enterprise agreement for the Army and agencies. So this does not include the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Force. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see, once the government reopens, because I know I said this back on your show in January, where our goddamn Navy deal. So I wouldn't be surprised because, yes, Palantir was supposed to get a $1 billion Navy deal back in January.
And we saw it on the government website. It just hasn't been announced yet.
Correct. So I am of the mindset, and I could be very wrong, that the Navy is going to give Palantir the same type of offer. 75 contracts, $10 billion. Maybe even the Air Force takes the shot at it in a similar way. I would not be surprised. The Navy is the slowest one to move. And with what Palantir is doing on a commercial side through Siemens and NVIDIA and HD Hyundai and the Blue Forge Alliance, their main thing is shipbuilding. How do we build more ships? How do we do it quicker, more productive, and more cost effective? They're not going to go in there and start making Aegis destroyers like Lockheed. What they did do, though, and this is one of their first partnerships, if you recall, this is many, many moons ago, is that they said to Lockheed, hey, you have Aegis, we have Apollo. Together, you're going to be able to deploy all your software across the entire fleet while you're in the middle of the ocean and need to do A, B, C, and D. So that's why one of the first things was the Aegis Apollo partnership. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see another type of these enterprise agreements with the Navy, with the Air Force, with the Space Force. Now, as it relates to this specific one, there's a lot of agencies in the Department of War now that are different, that are not part of the Army. So some of them, such as the Defense Intelligence System Agency, DISA. So with DISA, last year, Palantir got awarded a 1-year, I think it was 10, maybe $12 million prototype for the Electromagnetic Battle Management Joint Decision Support System. So Amit knows, and I'm sure he's tired of me saying this because I've been saying this for over a year now, the Spectrum is coming, and the Spectrum, I think, is going to be big dollars. So, and I did post this about a couple weeks ago, is they did have out there a electromagnetic warfare rapid integration system opportunity. And this opportunity is in connection to the Army Open Solicitations, which is connected to the 75 enterprise agreements. So I wouldn't be surprised because that 1-year deal is passed. But what we saw, I want to say in May, is an article that showed that DISA, who was overseeing this, and Stratcom, that's Strategic Command. So for all the people who aren't familiar, I think it is important that, there's 11 combatant commands. All 11 combatant commands are using Maven. But Stratcom and DISA put out an article and a press release basically saying, this fucking thing fucks. And it is just, I'm sorry, I tried my best. 30 minutes is pretty good. So they provide this electromagnetic battle management tool to help with the electromagnetic spectrum. And and this I have to bring it up now that I just go in there, is I was quoted in one of the Palantir haters articles, Lauren Ballack. Appreciate it. Thank you for the free press. I posted an image of just a battlefield image with no context. And I just said, and when people ask what Palantir does, I'm going to show them this image. That image was, I don't know who created it, but it was posted by NATO from 2 years ago about the electromagnetic spectrum. So what Palantir is providing is the tools for the warfighter to see the spectrum. Because what a lot of people don't understand, and this is very, very advanced stuff, and I don't understand it to the highest levels, is right now when you go into the battlefield, you want to see the enemy. You want to be able to see this is where they're positioned. This is what they have. This is what they have 10 miles out. This is what could potentially be coming if we move this position here. Is they provide this tool to allow the warfighter to see the spectrum. With that said, yep, that's the post. And somebody actually commented on it, says, "Oh, this is an old picture." And I replied back like, "Well, NATO posted it 2 years ago, so in defense terms, it's really not that old." So, it's just kind of funny how everyone wants to nitpick. Oh, it wasn't created yesterday. All right, go find me a more recent one. I'll gladly post it. So the electromagnetic spectrum, in conjunction with the 75 enterprise agreements through this one contract, could potentially be $1 billion contract. I'm just pulling that out of thin air. It might be 500 million. We don't know. So the key thing to remember is you have that opportunity with this one-year prototype that has been fulfilled. And Stratcom, for those that don't know, Stratcom is probably, I don't want to say the main combatant command, but they're the ones that are overseeing, I'll call it strike packages, the nuclear arsenal, and they are the ones putting it together in the global scale. So when they did Operation Midnight Hammer over the summer, or whenever that was, 5-6 months ago, when the U.S. dropped those ordnance bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities, Stratcom is playing a part of that. And if you go back and you listen to the commanders when they talked about the actual strike package, they talked about electronic warfare. And they basically said we were able to enter enemy territory unnoticed, come in, do our thing, no one attacked us, did what we need to do, and come back home safely with not one bullet fired, no one injured, successful package.
Right.
So that's what Palantir is providing. So when people try to say like, oh, what do they do? Palantir just provides the tools and the resources to, quote, shorten the kill chain on the defense side. With that said, a lot of people need to understand that they have a lot of products and services that aren't very in public, which is why I was very excited when Sham mentioned on the past earnings Maverick and Gaia, because Maverick.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What are some of these? Because these might be the new Mavens of one day, essentially.
Well, they're definitely not the new Maven. So let's just make that clear. So Maven is, overall, Maven provides a common operating picture. So what Maven would do is, I'm trying to simplify it as easy as possible. So Maven provides the armed forces the ability to connect sensors to shooters to quicken that kill chain. So what Gaia would do, and I'm just pulling up my notes real quickly.
I'll also get the clip from Sham when he specifically mentioned Gaia and Maverick. Let me see if I can pull that up.
So Gaia, what Gaia specifically does is it securely integrates into all phases of the operation a geospatial tooling enable that allows the analyst and the operator to work within a shared map interface for intelligence operation, preparation, digital mission planning, and live battle tracking on top of an integrated data set. The user across the mission enclaves and the command can concurrently build a holistic operation plan with a shared understanding of both mission and operating environment. So what that basically means is Gaia is able to take from a geospatial network, i.e., Maven, or integrated into Maven, take all these map interfaces with all the information related to it, put it in a common operating picture for the operator, and they can see. And if you've seen Palantir demos or images, you can see when they do that geospatial stuff where they show the globe and they show the forces. That's Gaia, and what they're able to do
And
is
that would
basically.
be like implemented within Maven, is what you're
So
saying.
this is
Roughly.
why I wanted to talk about Army Intelligence Data Platform. I was a big believer that it happened through Maven. It doesn't.
Hmm.
So right now, what I'm seeing is there's Army Intelligence Data Platform and there's the Maven Smart System. Army Intelligence Data Platform is more geared toward, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but it's just because of how I'm researching it, is more geared toward the spectrum and the electromagnetic spectrum. Because what we're seeing is the operators are using both AIDP, so not AIP, AIDP, and Maven to fuse it together and see everything in one shared pane of glass. What they're trying to do is to put everything together. But like I said before, it's new technology. They've
Right.
never done this before. It takes time. So just for everyone to understand exactly what AIDP is, Army Intelligence Data Platform. It's a cloud-based platform that's designed to unify and streamline intelligence operation across the Army, defense, and intelligence community. So, with through close collaboration and continuous feedback from Army Military Intelligence Brigade, AIDP delivers a highly configured solution that replaces legacy stovepipes with a single integrated environment, empowering battlefield leaders with real-time actionable insights while also dramatically reducing infrastructure costs. So I'm going to give you a real life example right now because it's very hard to understand it just by reading what Palantir puts out there. And I don't blame them to making it.
Yeah, and this is also really important because like AIP is on the commercial side, Maven's on the government side. AIDP might become sort of the new offering that is integrated with a lot of these different Mavericks, Gaias, etc. And that could be another vector of growth that people are
So
underestimating.
Maverick, just for what it's worth, it's more related to to striking, if I'm not mistaken. So it's more related towards Air Force related stuff because that's what I've been seeing it in. And it's just funny because we first heard Sean talk about Maverick like 2.5 years ago. So when
Yeah.
he brought it up again, I was just like, oh, okay. They let it marinate for a while. So, but it's nice to see it go. But AIDP, and this is to give you a better understanding. And I kind of found a very great article or a couple, if you will, about how the Army is using AIDP and the processes that it's going through. So you have AI, and this is the military speaking. This is not me. So you have Operation Spartan Chain, and this is where it's all going through. So during Operation Spartan Chain, you had the 34th Infantry's divisions deployment, blah 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 blah, with the G2. The G2 are intelligence commanders. The available space inside the expandable van allowed for one geospatial intelligence workstation. So this is also within Titan, if I'm not mistaken. So that intelligence commander is in a Titan using Gaia, trying to make this all easy. One GeoNet plotter on an intelligence fusion server and 10 classified network workstations with access to multiple web applications such as AIDB, Maven, and Chat Surfer. So you're in a Titan, you have one operator using GeoNet kind of stuff. So they're using Gaia, a meta constellation. Then you have one worker who's working on the fusion part of it. So how do we fuse all this information together from Gaia, AIDP, Maven? Chat Surfer looks to be something created by DARPA. And if you remember in Karp's book, not the new one that's coming out about CARP, but the one that he wrote, he does talk about DARPA quite a lot. So you're really starting to see the operating picture come together. So if you take it from my words versus the Army's, it's a little bit more simplified, but but listen to this. I think this is the best way to do it. There's the critical role of SIGINT and EW in tactical operations. So that's basically the critical role of signal intelligence and electronic warfare. And there's about 3 or 4 phases. To focus on the command and control and the counter command and control, expand and maneuver across domains and fires, we must sign a team of signal control, intelligence, electronic warfare, and there's 3 phases. There's detect and identify, there's target and disruption, and there's also a phase 3, which is what we're going to focus on now. Palantir is involved in all those phases because the operator is seeing everything through a Maven Smart system or an AIDP. Because when you're detecting something, you might be detecting it through an L3, technology. And we know they have a very deep partnership with L3, and L3 is pretty big on electronic warfare. So they're seeing something using L3 technology in phase 1. All right. In phase 2, target and disruption. We're going to go back to that in a second because really cool stuff. In phase 3, engage and destroy. With the drone rendered ineffective, the fire support element coordinates an artillery strike on an enemy in a UAS, which is an unmanned aerial, if you will, ground control station, leveraging the precision geolocation, Gaia, refined by enhanced tools like the electromagnetic warfare planning tool and management tool, and the Army Intelligence Data Platform. Simultaneously, the electronic warfare platoon continues to jam enemies' communications, preventing coordinated support or retrograde. Friendly forces neutralize the target, allowing maneuver elements to proceed unimpeded. So right there in that phase 3, they're using Army Intelligence Data Platform and EWPMT, which I thought was going to be canceled, but maybe it's not going to be canceled. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, it's Raytheon. So boo Raytheon, but there's going to be other players in the game. Don't know why they didn't cancel it. Maybe they thought, let it be. Palantir can just integrate everything and they'll take the bread of it. But we'll know that more.
They have canceled a lot of Booz Allen Hamilton contracts.
And Booz Allen, Raytheon hasn't done it yet. Booz Allen partnered with Palantir.
Yep.
And so General Dynamics is another really, really big player in the game. They partnered with Palantir. So you're going to see a lot of Palantir and this company. That's why when I first started coming on here, I was very big on MOSA, because a lot of the stuff either A, has already been built by these big legacy contractors like a Raytheon or Lockheed, or it's these new guys that have to come into the defense ecosystem but don't either have the manpower resources or the technology to get it all. That's where Palantir comes into play. They're able to connect all the stovepipes and create the common operating picture. But if you remember that phase 2 is the target. So you have the engage and destroy within AIDP, but you also have you're going to want this. It's sick. I got to find it real quickly.
As you guys can tell, Adam is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. I'm putting his Twitter right here in the chat for those that are following Palantir, the company. If you are not following Adam, you definitely should, especially because a lot of this work is open sourced. He's been publicly putting out this information for years at this point. So there's his Twitter right there in the chat.
So the 18th Airborne Corps, who helped develop the Maven Smart system, they do these exercises to refine the system. And in one of the older exercises, and it was from earlier this year, they had this part called Intelligence Support and Targeting. If Sham's watching, he's going to love this. Regarding systems and their interoperability, passing objects between Army Intelligence Data Platform and Maven Smart System, specifically within the Target Workbench tool. So Those are 3 Palantir products in the first fucking sentence. Go grab your Kleenex. So you have was significantly limited during this exercise. The bifurcation of observation and object-based production created a significant time gap. Now, how big is this time gap, you might be asking? Typically 10 minutes. Now, 10 minutes might not seem like a big gap in the grand scheme of things. On the battlefield, it's eternity. So if that's where the system is right now, there's a 10-minute lag. And every day it gets better, faster, more efficient. What happens when 10 minutes becomes 1 second? That's why Maven is a prototype, because you're having these gaps. Now I'm going to finish reading my little thing. Before the data populated into Gaia, fourth product. So there's a 10-minute gap before it goes into Gaia. This time gap caused by cascading effects that restricted the 18th Airborne Corps' ability to conduct dynamic targeting, especially in the fast-paced, large-scale combat operation environment. Conducting deliberate targeting using objects created in AIDP also had its limits. The Air Force Corps G2, so intelligence officers, produced the enemy order of battle using AIDP's graph tool, creating objects and associating key pieces of equipment for each unit. There were 2 reasons for this. First, these objects would feed BDA, and second, this would allow the analysts and targeters to gain efficiencies by associating information and intelligence to the objects to build the target pack in AIDP instead of previously used PowerPoint slide deck. So take your fucking PowerPoint, print it out, wipe your ass with it. It's done. It's over. It's gone. It's a dinosaur. Goodbye. This is why the analysts can't get it. Spreadsheets, it's done. PowerPoints, it's done. It's a dinosaur. It's going extinct. Unfortunately, the target information cannot be passed to the Maven Smart system. The limitation forced the 18th Airborne Corps G2s getting team to operate on Maven Smart system almost exclusively to support the fires and to use target workbench residing in Maven Smart system. So now you're starting to see and understand why Maven is so important and why it's still in prototype stage. This exercise, I think, was in May or April of this year. So next year, when the report comes out, maybe 10 minutes is 5 minutes. Maybe it's 2 minutes. I don't know. But this is why Maven is so critical to the armed forces and still in prototype stage. Because in defense context, never mind 10 minutes, 10 seconds can be the difference between life or death. So that's why they haven't awarded Maven a full-on official program of record. They're still working out the quirks. They're still working out the cost. And what we're seeing now, especially in NATO, because since they adopted Maven, they're now training the officers to use Maven. And we actually posted it the other day, shout out Bobcat Gang, that NATO is now hosting Maven Smart System boot camps. Because
wow.
Yeah. And I got to say this, and they probably shouldn't, but I have to just because it's so goddamn cool. The director of Task Force NATO actually follows me. So shout out. I'm not going to mention your name. Probably my favorite follower just because it's like so goddamn cool. So shout out to you and appreciate all your service, and thank you to the armed forces. So Maven Smart System. Once targets were actioned and the collection had confirmed or denied effects on the target, AIDP ingested the observation reports. Analysts then sell the manually sorted, filtered those reports to associate them with a specific target. This is an instance where the 18th Airborne Corps identified slow, inefficient processes that could be not implemented by a quick fix during exercise, blah, 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 blah. Nevertheless, it provided a key opportunity for the intelligence officers to provide feedback on the issue and work directly with AIDP representatives, begin an investigation and a solution. What does that mean? Palantir FDEs were told, dude, This thing is going to get us killed unless you make it quicker and more efficient. We weren't able to do this, which
Mm.
is the OODA loop. And Sham even mentioned, I know that was like one of the first things I shared on this stream with you and your followers was the OODA loop. They need to make everything as quick as possible. So that's what you're starting to see. And you've noticed I'm only really mentioning AIDP. And I'm going to skip a little bit. I'm going to go one more. Integrating single source intelligence analysis into AIDP is a crucial for intelligence to support both targeting and situational awareness during large scale operations. Intelligence professionals work from assumption that the enemy utilizes fast emplacement, engagement, and displacement of systems to bolster survivability. As a rule, a well-trained crew can displace within 10 to 15 minutes, making targeting timelines exceptionally tight. Analyzing and disseminating a near real-time indication of target activity is essential for enabling the intelligence of warfighting function to feed the targeting process. So you're starting to see now that Maven's not perfect. It's not. But it's so far ahead of the game that in 5 years, when the prototype is done, and we don't know the NATO deal, we don't, that it will become maybe instead of a 5-year, $480 million prototype, it will become a 5-year, $5 billion official program of record. So,
do you think Carp and the Ministry of Defense in Poland made a deal because of what's going on with Maven with NATO as well?
I don't think it was specifically, quote, because of Maven. I think it's because of what has gone on in Russia, Ukraine over the past couple of years.
Mm.
So a lot of people have been asking me, and maybe for you, this might be a little bit rookie because me and you have talked so much about it over the years. What is Maven and what is JADC2? So JADC2 is Joint All-Domain Command and Control. It's basically to connect the sensors and shooters to quicken the kill chain. It's just a vision. Maven is part of that vision to bring the armed forces to a JADC2, fighting force. So when you see countries like Poland signing deals like this, it's because they have seen Ukraine fight off the Russian army using a significantly smaller army and a significantly, I don't want to use the word less trained, but I'm going to use the word less trained fighting force because they're not part of NATO. So think about it. All those countries that are part of NATO, they take part in all these exercises. So they're getting trained. Ukraine's not. So the Ukrainian fighters who had experience had to, basically train civilians. So this is going to bring up something that's really cool right now. And I do want to transition this some way back to the 75. And I know I can ramble, but it was all for good stuff. If anybody's played Call of Duty, you played Call of Duty?
Long time ago, yeah.
Okay. So one of the main Ukrainian, I'll call it companies in the defense space is Bravo One. And if you remember the article when they had the big time article about Ukraine and Palantir and Maven, they talk about Bravo One. Well, because the Ukrainians are so good at drone warfare and electromagnetic, because the Russians are really good at electronic warfare, that they're becoming so good at it, they have incentivized their fighting force through a Call of Duty strategy via the company store. So if you go and you kill 10 Russians, and you can prove that, you can go to the Bravo One company store, built on Palantir most likely, and you can get better drones, better equipment. So they're literally doing Call of Duty style, like, oh, you ranked up, now you get this new gun skin, now you get this better drone. And this is incentivizing them to actually go out there and build better stuff.
Right.
Do this, do that. Because if you want to survive in that foxhole, you need the best possible equipment. Now, the reason why I don't think they're literally just giving it to them is because they are at such a disadvantage in terms of numbers that they don't want to give this equipment out unless you are literally proving your worth out there and proving you could take out these forces and keep this village alive and keep your, soldiers alive and your friends alive, because they're severely strapped. I read one article, and I know I posted it also, where they dropped in a motorcycle for this guy because he was stuck on the battlefield. And that's like one of the most crazy videos I've ever seen. But some of these Ukrainians, they built a drone explosive out of a Pringles can. So that's how good they are in drone warfare. And that's why the Americans and NATO and our allies are trying to learn on this battlefield, because this is what the next big war is going to look like. So when they have this Bravo One company store, think about it from an American standpoint. Think about all the Department of War budget, $1 trillion. Think about it now. We're not going to give you this. We want you to prove that you can keep your colleagues alive, your soldiers alive on the battlefield. Come back to us, and then we'll give you bigger and better equipment. Because if you don't, you might be dead. So it's going to give you reason to actually go out there and survive and thrive.
Right.
Which brings me back to more 75, which is our good friends who are hating on the NGC2 battle system, next command and control system, which, as you saw, I posted this about maybe a week and a half ago. I saw this great video of them using it, and I took a screenshot, and you can see it has palantir.gov in the link. You might want to pull that up. It was so awesome. Just getting validation.
Did you send it to me? What exactly?
I gotta look for it real quickly. But NGC2 is the next generation command and control. So obviously Palantir is playing a part with it in conjunction with Anduril.
Yes. And this is also what caused the Reuters controversy a month ago.
Exactly. I just sent you the link here. So with the NGC2 that Reuters came out, they basically said there was inefficiencies and things weren't working well. The problem is they were citing an old exercise that was already outdated. And a week before this, I posted an article talking about how they were doing an exercise where they were using this system, that link that you're looking at right there, to deploy shooters. And that's the whole point of JADC2, is to connect the sensors to shooters to quicken the kill chain. So they're going on to this NGC2 network, which has components of Anduril and components of Palantir, as well as others, like Lockheed got a contract for their own. And just for the record, I want it known, the Reuters article that was mentioning these inefficiencies, it was Anduril, because I saw something where they came out, they cleared it up. It didn't matter because there are inefficiencies. I just read one to you. A 10-minute gap, that doesn't do them any good. But they fixed it, and it was old information. So what they're doing with this NGC2 is they're refining it, making it quicker, better, more efficient, cheaper, and you get an opportunity like this, which is the Calls for Solutions Army Applications Lab, which is part of the 75. And how do I know Palantir is going to get this? Because it is specifically mentioning the 4th Infantry. Now, the 4th Infantry is one of the key infantry groups that is specifically being tested for NGC2, Maven, and these other advanced technologies that Palantir and others are building. Another key group is the 25th Infantry. So when I'm looking at now the specific units in these fires, I'm specifically not looking at the military as a whole. I'm watching the 4th Infantry. I'm watching the 25th Infantry. So even if you just go to my Twitter and you put in 4th Infantry, you're going to see a bunch of stuff pop up because it's Pili-powered forces. So with the multi-domain task forces, and I won't get into detail on that, just search my Twitter for that. The multi-domain task forces, they might take the 4th Infantry, the 34th Infantry, the 25th Infantry, go across the world to Germany or go to Hawaii, and they're going to teach these other brigades and combat units, hey, this is the system that we're using. This is how you use it. So they're acting as forward deployed engineers, because now is the time where the armed forces are going to have software-defined hardware. This is it. It's being built out. And this is why I don't think these suits can see it. So the Army Future Command is seeking innovative, readily available solutions for use of the 4th Infantry Division, based in Colorado, by the way, at the beginning of the calendar year of 2026. These solutions should be capable of extending experimentation with soldiers in the field, focused on at least one of 8 capabilities focused areas listed in Section C. They should be open to integration with the Next Generation Command and Control, Palantir, prototype ecosystem that the Program Executive Office Command, Control, and Communication Network is developing over the next 18 months within the 4th Infantry. So these are the 8 that they mentioned. Movement and maneuver, unmanned or improved security, safety and security of operation, including route, mine clearance, breaching, bunker, trench, blah, 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 blah. So that right there basically is Titan. So we saw that they created a newer Titan that no one was expecting. That's part of Command Post Integrated Command and Control. So the CPI-2 is Titan. And the 4th Infantry is going to help the network expand that. Because what they don't want is they don't want soldiers sitting in one place like you and I right now and potentially getting a freaking bomb dropped on them, because that's their command post. So Titan is going to act as that command post. I've also seen them do these exercises where they'll take a command post, basically, put it in a I forgot which plane it is, a KC-52 or something. So they're flying in the air, and the command post is up in the air. I've also seen it where they're in a submarine. So they're really trying out everywhere. So when they say multi-domain, they really mean air, sea, space, cyber, land. And unfortunately, it just takes time because they need to work it all out and make sure that they can do it at speed. So you have movement and maneuver, mission command. That's tools that process the data. That's your NGC2. That's Palantir. Your intelligence, loitering capabilities and sensor network. Palantir has a sensor intelligence platform. Reconnaissance and targeting acquisition. That's going to be your AIDP and Maven. Your fires, your drone swarm or sensor to soldier systems that aid in target acquisition. That's going to be your AIDP and your target pack that we just discussed. Your sustainment, that's autonomous convoy, aerial and ground resupply capabilities. And health tools. And that's really cool. The health tools, I found one that's actually, I don't want to get deep into it because I have to do a lot more digging, but it's called MASH. And basically what they want to be able to do is if you're a soldier and you got shot and you're bleeding in your arm or your leg, they want to be able to deploy an autonomous system, a robot, and maybe it's an Optimus or a figure robot if they can get there, go to the soldier and stop the bleeding, the robot itself. And they're trying to do that because I forgot where it was that I read it, that they said the time from, soldier down to like actually brought to like the medical, I think they said it was about like, in Israel, they said it was like 3 to 5 minutes, but granted, it's a lot smaller space. I think they said like out in the Indo-Pacific or if in another battlefield space, it's like 8 to 12 minutes. If you're losing blood, 8 minutes is a long time. So that, right, but they're going to be hopefully training that software on Palantir. And if not, like a Lattice is its own system, it's going to be integrated within Palantir. Really cool stuff. And then you have protection, so a system that augments security, defense operations. We know how secure the system is, even though routers, those idiots, and Benioff, that beta cuck, talks about, oh, they're bad, we could do what they could do, and there's bad. No, they're just working on it. And information is tools that can scan and detect for network vulnerabilities, automated monitoring of disinformation. Babcock Gang and myself, we actually saw something the other week, and we never published it, but there was I'll call it a rogue officer, if you will. He was doing stuff that he shouldn't have been doing, and he got caught, and they dismissed him. How did he get caught? Because Palantir provides the system where if you abuse your power, there's an audit trail, and the person above you can see that.
Yep.
So this person thought he was so cool, doing his thing, obviously not doing what he was supposed to be doing, and he just ruined his life. All because the system is built with these kinds of capabilities and vulnerabilities, or to detect said vulnerabilities, so that you can't take information away if you're not supposed to, or get information if you don't have this permit or this level of access. So stuff out there is really cool. So when Karp's talking about, I forgot if it was the CNBC interview or not the Axios one, the CNBC one or another one, but he said 3 trillion and 10x. There were two different interviews. The 3 trillion might have been a different one, but the 10x
That was with Andrew Ross Sorkin like 4 months ago.
at the Y at the
Yeah,
I was at that one. You think I was too busy getting high off the piss lace fentanyl quote. So so when he's talking about $3 trillion market cap and a 10x in 5 years from here, this is how. It's these systems, it's these tools, because Uncle Sam is the biggest spender in the entire world. And once these systems get flushed out and to the exact point where they need it to be, they're going to get paid. So even with the government shutdown, they're still doing what they're supposed to do and doing above and beyond that to make sure the warfighter comes home. And a lot of these companies, granted, we're already in fiscal year 26 because the fiscal year starts in October. They might not get paid for their work now, but they'll get paid later. The government will reopen, just like how Palantir has gotten money from Ukraine, but they'll get more money once eventually the war ends, hopefully sooner rather than later, and hopefully the government opens up sooner rather than later. But this is how it's going to happen. So everything from working with the 4th Infantry to one with HR intelligence. So that's another one of the 75. It's helping the HR. That's Vantage.
Yep.
So a lot of these soldiers, when they have to do course credits and stuff, they do it through Vantage. So you're starting to see how Palantir, they really have no competition, and they built the entire ecosystem and products that people haven't even thought of yet that they know they will need in the coming years. So
let's
really exciting stuff.
It's very exciting stuff, and as everyone can see, Adam has understood this stuff for the past 4 years, and I would imagine it is a bit vindicating to see some of this stuff start to manifest itself in real life. Let's end it on this, because you and me text about this all the time, which is that people just don't know what's coming, right? And that's where you get the suits and the analysts and the Rishis that now have us at a $50 target instead of 45. So thanks, Rishi, for that. They don't see what's coming. What is your message to everyone? And there's Adam's Twitter in the chat for those who can follow, about what you think is coming in the future, what Palantir knows is coming in the future, but what some people still are too skeptical to really see playing out.
So I'll answer that from a government context.
Yeah.
Because that's mostly where I focus on. And that's where Uncle Sam spends the most. And I'll use the State Department as an example. I came on your show last year in August to talk about this artificial intelligence solution that I knew they were going to win, because they were the only ones that made sense. And it was for the State Department, we learned. And they got a 1-year, $420 million contract. When that 1 year ends, what's going to happen? They're going to get a bigger contract, most likely. So when you can't see what's coming, just look at your government. From the IRS to the VA to the State Department to the Department of War, all of them are going to be running on AI. Now, if they're going to be using AI such as ChatGPT, Grok, insert AI application LLM here, there has to be an operating system to make sure that it doesn't hallucinate and it's used effectively and correctly and without providing the wrong answer. That's the ontology. That's Palantir. So if you don't know where it's going, I recommend a couple things. Follow myself and Bobcat Gang, because you'll get a very good idea. Or just read what they put out there, both Palantir and Uncle Sam. Because even though they are, I'll call it a apolitical company, they are in a very political world right now. It doesn't matter if it's Republican, Democrat running the show. The system is going to be there regardless, because no one can do what they can do. And if you remember, they were brought in by the Biden-Obama administration. So they really got their foothold under a Democratic leadership. Now, it's expanding under Republican leadership. That's mostly just because the products have developed so much since then. So the Pentagon, for example, they put out a memo about 3 months ago that they want AI running on 3 million computers in the next 6 to 9 months. That was 3 months ago. So if the Pentagon wants 3 million computers running AI applications, that's 3 million operators using Palantir. Now, will they also use an OpenAI? I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll also use Grok. I'm sure they'll also use some other LLM that has not come along yet, that we have no idea, that no one's even thought of. But the point is, the operating system for artificial intelligence and machine learning is Palantir. It's Foundry. So in the government context, you're just going to see massive expansion from both the United States and the West and their allies. We saw it with Dubai the other week. The UAE is going to expand big time. I think you're going to see massive expansion in Asia as well as the Middle East. They are just dying for it. And they don't have the red tape that us here in the US have with all this bureaucratic policy bullcrap. They're going to, if they want to implement Foundry in Saudi, it's going to be at a snap of the fingers. So nothing but time. From a commercial context, if you don't want to listen to Carp, that's fine. Listen to the customers. They talk about how great it is and how they were able to do something in 5 seconds that used to take them 6 months.
Yep.
Go find somebody that is able to replicate that. You can't. So it's still very early in its infancy. Has the ship left the station? I would say from a stock perspective, it's probably left the dock. Is it far out into the ocean yet? You probably can't hit it with a stone, but you probably can catch up to it. There's still many, many, many more miles and many, many more parts of this journey we still have to go. Because 2030, and that's how I look at it, is the army of 2030 is still 5 years away.
Yep.
And that's what I'll say on that point. Follow the company, do not follow the stock. Listen to the Carpin leadership. If you don't believe them, listen to the armed forces, listen to their customers.
Yeah, and I think for all of us, it's been a good problem to have, but it is indeed a problem. All of us felt that in 2030, Palantir would be $100 and we'd have a big party in Vegas because we saw it at $6 in 22. So we're like, all right, over 8 years, it'll probably get to 100, maybe 150. We'll have a party. We got to 100 in 2.5 years. And then we got to 200 8 months later. So for us, it's also like, all right, we know that the story that we found in the depths of the bear market in 2022 has now been discovered by the world. And then you have this faction of the world saying that story is not good enough for it to be pulling forward all that growth and all that premium. And we're acknowledging, like, yeah, they're pulling forward a lot of growth and premium. But as you said, this story is evolving. The company is executing at a level we haven't seen before. And obviously the stock is expensive, but if you care too much about the stock and not the story, which is what really matters for the stock to eventually grow into its valuation and continue to expand its multiple and get to that 3 trillion as Carp is talking about, you're going to miss it. And I think that's the nuance all of us have had to deal with, which is that the stock has vastly caught up to the performance of the company, but the performance of the company is still so good that the stock still has more room to run over the long term. But you have to really have a long-term view.
Absolutely. And myself and everyone in the fellowship, since we've been following Palantir since DPO, we've always said 504. 504 is inevitable. It's going to come, and eventually it'll go past 504, and I'll just be patriotic and say 1776. So, just keep buying dips and holding if you believe in the company and it's going to hit what it claims it's going to do. And the crazy part about it is Europe is such a, I don't want to use the word black hole, but there's such a lagger in this that we will see massive growth from other parts of the world outside of the US. But I think once Europe catches up, because they're catching up from a government perspective, like it's going to all come in through NATO and government, like we see with NHS, NATO, and all these other programs. Once the commercial starts to adopt it, that's when things are going to get real spicy. And that's probably not going to come till the 2030s from outside the US. But like you said, it's just a long story and they are accomplishing so much. And think about it like this. They can only do X in 24 hours. So it's one day at a time. and they are hitting on all cylinders. And they are set out to really revolutionize the Western world. And I truly believe they're going to do it. You cannot have working, truthful, efficient AI without Palantir.
I agree. And they've been working 20 years for this moment via the ontology, which is the orchestration of these LLMs. And then, as you said, there's a lot of international revenue that is yet to be achieved yet, and that's coming. And when that comes, along with how U.S. commercial is growing, it really is a story that could be one of the best stories in the history of the market.
And me and you will be there every step of the way.
I love it. Adam, thank you so much. There's his Twitter right there in the chat. Shout out Adam, DV, Bobcat Gang. You guys have been absolutely invaluable to this story over the past 10 years, or really, it feels like 10 years, really 4 or 5 years. But in 2030, when we're doing another stream like this, it's going to be crazy to know that in 2025, we were talking about what the army of 2030 looks like. And then it's going to be, I mean, just like even reminiscing on 2022 and how far things have progressed, it really has just been one of the best journeys of our entire lives.
And much more to go.
Adam, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll see you guys on the future show in a couple hours, and we'll see you next time with Adam. Bye, everybody.